funnily enough, when I first came across your playing, it was actually quite a long time ago, and it was from a video with Mark Tremonti shredding away in it was before a show or something like that.
Alter Bridge was playing here in Houston. Is where I'm at.
Yeah.
And me and Mark have been friends for a very long time, so it's kind of our ritual. Every time he comes through town, I'll just go down around the time the bus pulls in, and we'll just sit around and play guitar all day, and until it's time for the bus to leave at 2 or 3 in the morning, whenever.
Yeah, because it's funny because Mark's my kind of my musical hero, and you sort of you burst the bubble a bit, because I was looking, because in my head I'm like, oh, he's just like the cool, and then I just see you absolutely flying up and down the fretboard. I'm like, oh god, like
nice man, nice.
It's it was cool to see you guys sort of shred together. But what's the music scene like in Houston?
Music scene here is, well, it's okay. Honestly, I don't get out a lot locally. Something I did more when I was in my early 20s or whatever. You know what I mean? But there's certainly a music scene here. I don't know how well any town is for original music. You know what I mean? When you're just getting started, it's kind of rough doing that anywhere, I think.
I'm in the process of doing that myself, so I know it's the trials and tribulations of being in a small band.
But I mean, all in all, I think it's pretty good scene here. There's plenty of diversity in the music and all kinds of different styles and whatnot. So I think it's pretty open for most people, whether you play rock, jazz, blues, whatever. That'll for everybody to fit in somewhere.
Are there any kind of local bands that you're sort of following and keeping an eye on, or is it not getting out as much as you said?
I'm not getting out as much. I'm trying to think. Is there any local bands?
It's free publicity.
Yeah, right. No, man, I hate to say it, but there's not anybody I can think off the top of my head, because I really don't go out that much. I've got some friends of mine that play and stuff like that, but I don't even get out to see them, unfortunately.
Oh no.
But whenever I go out anywhere, it's like a big deal. I went to a show the other night. I went and saw Seven Dust, and I
saw that on your Instagram.
Yeah, and I did like a live stream from my phone onto whatever, and I started getting calls the next day. I was like, wow, you actually left your house? What are you doing? You posted on the internet, and you made a post, and it's like, are you okay?
I think the last couple of years you've had a very reasonable excuse. So it's a lot of people are saying this is a great excuse to not go out sometimes. But because is that so with this with your podcast? Because it was funny, like I said, I sort of spoke to you about doing the podcast. It's like, oh, you've got a podcast yourself, so I had to check it out. And is that something that you really sort of put your mind to in this sort of pandemic time? Was it something that you thought, I really want to kind of push this forward, and now you've got a lot of time to yourself, or was it quite an organic
this just kind of happened. It wasn't planned. It certainly didn't have anything to do with the pandemic. My co-host Zach, I initially met. He took lessons from me. He took some guitar lessons, and not a whole lot. He initially came to me for more music industry advice, and not as much playing. Because he's already got his chops and all that stuff together. But and it kind of turned into a friendship, and he started kind of helping me out with my social media and stuff, and redesign my website. And we were talking one night on Skype, and I said, man, we should do a podcast or something. You know what I mean? Just a show. He's like, dude, that's a great idea. He goes, let's do it. We're going to set it in stone now. We're going to launch this thing in February. And it was like November. You know what I mean? So, I mean, it just fell into place and just happened, and we did it. That's some of the best stuff that happens when you just do it,
And how do you compare the whole sort of, because obviously as a musician, a big part of it is being creative. How do you compare the sort of creative side of the podcast? How do you go about sort of making it your own, because there's a lot of podcasts out there, myself included. So what do you kind of, what do you think about that, or do you just approach it?
No, I don't. I mean, it's just like the local music scene. I don't really pay attention to what everybody else is doing.
It's the best way.
I've been doing it for a long time, and it takes a lot to get me excited about anything. And I think the most important thing for me is that I just keep it real, just be organic, just be natural. And it's kind of funny because you said to me when we were starting today, you wanted to be kind of like sitting around a pub with some friends, and that's exactly the way I describe this. When people I approach some of my friends or whoever's on the show, I tell them, I said, look, this is not an interview. It's just like friends sitting around a dinner table having a good conversation. So it's not, I mean, you can certainly come on and promote anything that you're doing, and we can talk about anything you want to talk about, but it's really a conversation. It's back and forth. We're having a conversation. So that doesn't mean I'm just going to sit there and ask them questions, the guests. It's going to be just like, we're hanging out and talking. And
sorry, carry on.
You're good, man. For the most part, most of the musicians that we've had on the show, guitar players, I've already known and had friendship with for many years, and so that makes it even easier. I mean, there's been several people that I didn't like know necessarily really well or whatever. But when season 1 was definitely a lot of my buddies. You know what I mean? So
I've only just started digging into the Mark episode. I need to watch that because
they're really good. And when we first started this thing, there was no time limit on it. We would just roll until we were done. So I think our first episode with Bear Nelson from Scar Symmetry was like 3 hours or something like that. And I think we just did, as we got into season 1 and started getting a feel for it, and then I think on season 2 we decided to try to keep everything at about an hour. Just try that. So we got season 3 that we're gearing up for now, and I think we're just going to go back to just letting it flow. You know what I mean?
I think when you say sort of letting it flow, I found the best ones the ones I kind of feel like I don't want to say I've even enjoyed the most, just the ones that I feel that people will hopefully connect with the most are the ones where actually I've had a chance to talk. It's not felt like a sort of a one-sided thing. It's felt like, because I know people aren't here for me sort of thing. They're here for whoever I'm talking to, but it always feels like that's the impression I get. I don't know how you feel about it, but I always feel like if I have a chance to give my sort of feedback on what they're saying, rather than just sort of next question.
Sure, it's really a conversation. We're hanging out, we're having a conversation. You know what I mean? And just everybody else gets to sit in on that conversation and be a fly on the wall, so to speak. I like it to be that way, just very natural. And it's like I'll tell people sometimes that don't know about the show. It's like imagine if Joe Rogan played guitar. Right.
There you go. Yeah, just sort of hanging out. Yeah,
just hanging out, talking. Excuse me, just having a good time, and just And I tell people too, it's like, look, if you're burnt out and you don't want to talk about the music industry or guitar, whatever. Let's talk about, what Christmas is coming up, or it's going to be Halloween. What do you guys do, man? You got kids, what's going on in your house? What do you do when you're not on the road?
Well, Halloween is actually my birthday, so there you go. There's plenty of conversation there.
So it can be anything and everything, And we try to. The most important thing is that we try to do is just kind of help educate, in a way, people that happen to be on the show, if they're guitar players, which most of them are. But giving insight on everything from everything and anything about playing guitar to gear to the music business to being on the road, your health and taking care of yourself while you're doing all that stuff, and because they can wear you down if you're out on the road touring constantly and whatnot. So it's just how do you do everything? How do you manage everything? How do you manage your life on the road and off the road and balance everything out? So there's a lot of insight and good information that I think people can benefit from and learn from. Maybe help somebody from making a mistake by hearing about one of our mistakes. So I mean that's the thing.
Yeah, there's a lot. I think there are a lot of. I think also you get the most organic answers and the most real human sort of conversations when you do go off the rails a bit. Not off the rails, but it's not talking about the music side of things. I mean, I've had some great conversations about all sorts of things. I talked to Eric Steckel about beans on toast, which is a thing I think you guys don't do. Maybe this is just going to be an ongoing segment with anyone that I talk to that's not from the UK. Go beans on toast, yay or nay.
What is that?
What, baked beans on toast?
Okay, beans on toast. Okay, I got you.
This is definitely. I'm just going to have to make this an ongoing thing.
There you go, man.
Yeah. Is that
beans on toast, man?
It's all right.
It is what it is, right?
It's pretty plain. It's as far as I'm trying to think of a musical, like a guitar equivalent of what I couldn't even name it. It's the most middle of the road, like just
right. It's just it's just substance.
Exactly. Yeah, it just keeps you going.
And a carb,
Yeah, I think I said to Eric Steckel, it can either fix your hangover or make it like 10 times worse. So
I can imagine.
Yeah. So speaking of, what's like the most you've gone sort of off the rails conversation wise in a podcast so far? The way you thought, wait, how is this a music podcast?
I think it hasn't gone too far off the rails, but I think the most interesting conversations We did a podcast with Bill Hudson, and we talked about some of our worst gigging experiences. And he was talking about how he was throwing up on stage one time, and
Oh, rough.
something like that. And Zach had somebody throwing up on his pedal board at a gig, and now that I'm thinking about it, I can't even remember what mine was, but I don't know.
Something to do with throw up.
Yeah, probably something to do with throwing up. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I think that was kind of the most off topic, or non-music related in a way. How do you deal with illness being on the road or at a show? It's a good one.
When it's literally on your pedal board, how do you deal with that?
Right. Yeah.
That's
I think somebody. I think in that same one, somebody was. I think maybe Zach said that he saw. I think it was on social media somewhere that some guy posted a picture of his pedal board and his dog had just taken a crap on it or something. You know what I mean? It's like, talk about worst gig ever.
At least it happened at a gig. That's kind of pretty rock and roll.
Yeah.
Like your dog takes a dump on it. It's not really the same.
Yeah, hopefully you saw it and didn't step on it while you're stepping on one of your pedals.
Yeah, that would be sort of impressive of the dog. I mean, well, I don't know. Would it?
Yeah. Maybe it's a good aim.
What pedals did he lose? That's the question.
I don't know, because it wasn't Zach's pedal board. It was something he saw on social media. He said
okay.
on his feed or something. You know what I mean? I don't remember what it was on Facebook, Instagram, or something. But yeah.
Oh man, yeah, I
imagine that.
Yeah. Wait, so have you had a chance to sort of play much with your band post like things are now sort of, I don't know what it's like where you are, but
yeah, with everything since COVID started, Day of Reckoning hasn't done anything. We shot a music video that we're about to release. We had a whole tour set up. We had the album, our actual second EP was released about a month to 2 weeks before COVID hit. And the name of the album was Spread Your Disease.
Yeah.
No, merely coincidental. We'd had that title out for like a year, and we thought, well, either it's going to go viral or, no pun intended, or it's going to sink, and it's just kind of sitting there still, So, but we had a whole tour set up. We were getting ready to go out, and just, everything just got canceled, and we started to try to do some things, and then it got shut down. And I, at that point, it was just like, what? Until this is all done, whenever that's going to be. You need to just, I don't want to tour, set things up and then have it to be canceled and refund tickets and then, all that stuff that goes along with that, because we're still doing all that stuff ourselves. You know what I mean? It's not like we got a bunch of big management and record label taking care of all that stuff. You know what I mean? It's all very homegrown still. Day of Reckoning is still kind of in its infancy for the most part. I mean, we've been doing it for a little while, but just not, had a rough time with the lineup and things like that. Just internal things with different band members that have kept the band from really just being able to just go and play. It always seems like there's been something going on with somebody internally, and we don't have a drummer still. Last few tours that we've done have been with the temp drummer because we can't find a guy locally. And
they're all unreliable anyway.
Yeah, and it's trying to get somebody to relocate is not fun. But I like to have band members. I don't like. I mean, it's cool to be able to call somebody that can come do the tour, and fill in because you can still do something that, at least. You know what I mean? But it's pretty frustrating when you can't find somebody that's just a solid guy that just wants to do be the drummer. We're actually tossing some things around as well right now with the lineup again, but we're not losing anybody this time. We're adding someone. My lead singer, Brad, he's also a guitar player, very good guitar player. He's got his own band aside from Day of Reckoning, where he plays lead guitar, and he's the lead singer, and does the whole thing. And he can play bass as well. So we're tossing around the idea of him playing bass and doing vocals still, but having another lead singer come in, another guy from a local band that's really good. I don't want to say anything beyond that about names, but I think that's very exciting to me to actually have a main frontman and then Brad still singing and playing bass. It'll add a lot of energy. And we've played with Dave Reckoning's played with this other band that the singer's is going to be coming in from. So he's got a great, he's a great front man and whatnot. So it's like looking forward to that. And we, when this was all going down, we had some label interest. A couple different labels were interested in the band and stuff, and so everything's just kind of on hold. We're just kind of waiting it out. I have a ton of new material, and I'm anxious to get to, and I'm kind of starting to send the guys some stuff. So hopefully get that rocking and rolling.
Yeah, man. Is the do you find that your writing brain and your sort of lead playing brain are two different things? Because I imagine I'm thinking, how does the writing brain keep up with the lead brain? But like, do you feel they're two different sort of frames of mind? I don't quite know where I'm going with this exactly.
Kind of, but I try not to let them be too different. And what I mean by that is you're kind of onto something with that comment. Have you noticed that in other guitar players?
That they do that?
Have you asked anybody else that question before? I mean,
I don't actually think I have.
Okay, so with me as a kid growing up playing guitar, I had my favorite lead guitar players and I had my favorite rhythm guitar players. You know, my favorite lead guitar players, I didn't necessarily care for their songwriting as much as their rhythm guitar playing, because that's what it is. For me, it's like, you know, no matter how much writing credit a singer might get on a song, if it wasn't for the guy that playing the guitar on it, there would be no riffs for that guy to sing on. You know what I mean? So, you know, whether, you know, my favorite rhythm guitar players, whether they were the best songwriters or not, they wrote my favorite riffs. You know what I mean? Which became the songs. I'm more of like a riffologist. You know what I mean? You know, just come up with a bunch of cool riffs. And what I do is I don't necessarily come to the band and compose everything down to the last note and say, okay, here's the song, it's done, just learn it. What I'll do is I'll come up with all the parts that the song consists of. And I know this isn't exactly what you were asking, but I'll get back to that in a second.
No, whatever you want to answer it with.
So I'll come up with all the riffs that will be the song, and I'll have kind of a basic outline. You know what I mean? Because that's kind of as I write, they just kind of fall into that order. That just seems natural because if I'm just writing and I don't ever try to write, so that's another thing. But so I'll take those riffs of the band, and the bottom line is the singer has a lot to do with it in the respect that, you know, he's got to sing over it. So if he thinks this part's going to be a better chorus than this part, then that's fine. Let's just flip them around. You know what I mean? So whatever makes the most sense for the vocalists, I don't care what order we put the parts in, because they all, you know, at that point I'm happy with all the parts. You know what I mean? So and I don't even mind. You know, I'm very much for the song, so I don't care if a part needs to get dropped or whatever for the better, you know, for the betterment of the song. So that's kind of how that takes place. And what I meant a second ago when I said I don't really try to write, it's because I think if I sit down and I try to write, then I'm not going to come up with anything any good, because I'm trying. You know what I mean? My best stuff always stems from me practicing, and then I just something sparks my interest, or I might be working on a new scale or a new chord, and it just kind of starts to go somewhere. And that's where the writing starts with. Or some of my best stuff comes from when I'm teaching, because on the fly, when I'm in a lesson, I'll have to think of a way to show an example of something I might have been talking about, and I'll just make up something on the spot, and I'll go, oh, wow, that was cool, I got to remember that.
Very Tom Morello style, that.
Yeah, I mean, almost all of Under the Influence off my instrumental album was written in a guitar lesson. You know what I mean?
Nice.
Just different parts, you know. And that's why I had to name it Under the Influence, because I was showing some of my favorite stylings from Yngwie and Becker and Paul Gilbert, and you know what I mean? Kind of sounds like, you know, I'll See the Light Tonight when that song cranks up, you know. It was like I'll See the Night mixed with Racer X, you know. There's the rhythm chops with the fast alternate picked runs and some sweeps and stuff. So that's kind of where that came from. But yeah, you know, kind of coming full circle, growing up, I always had favorite rhythm guitar players and favorite lead guitar players, and a lot of times there was never all in one for me. So in a sense, yeah, there is that, but I try to branch that because I'm aware of it. As a student of the guitar, I'm aware of that's something that I experienced from my heroes and my favorite musicians. So I always tried to fuse that together so there wasn't that gap. You know what I mean? So I was hopefully closing that gap that maybe others were experiencing. If I'm experiencing it, I'm sure there's other guitar players that feel the same way in many respects. And it's the same thing with all the different, you know, techniques. You know, techniques are, you know, when I'm talking with students or other musicians, it's like it's not about the technique so much as it is a way to express yourself. You know, if your TV breaks down and the TV repairman shows up with a monkey wrench, he's probably less likely to get the job done properly. You know what I mean? But if he shows up with this big, awesome set of tools, you know, you're going to feel a little bit more confident about letting this guy start to work on your TV or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you know, techniques are the more diverse you are with those techniques, the more you're going to be able to express yourself and get the message across that you're trying to convey. And you have more ways of finishing the job or putting the final touches on it. And, you know, it all comes down to expressing yourself. Like I always had, along with having favorite rhythm guitar players and favorite lead guitar players, I also felt like I you know, a lot of times when I was growing up guitar players were specialists. Like this guy was really great at alternate picking. This guy was good at tapping. This guy was good at sweeping. This guy was good at legato or something. And I always felt like, on a day that I felt like hearing picking, I had to listen to a certain guitar player. But I wanted to hear more tapping or legato, I had to listen to somebody else. So for me, I wanted to be able to do what all those guys do, but under one roof. You know what I mean? That's why I've always tried to be as diverse and as fluent as many different techniques that I can, because I want, it's going to be, that means that I'm going to be less likely to get bored, and so will the listeners. If I'm just picking every solo, that's going to get old pretty quick, I would think. I mean, it does to me.
Well, it's not meant to be a study, is it? It's meant to be an expression of something, and that's where obviously you're not going to, it's unlikely you're going to express yourself in the same way, just flatly throughout a piece of music, is it? So
exactly, right? So that's why, those are a lot of things. So you got a lot of answers there, indirectly or
no, that's perfect. You've it's fine. I that's the whole point of this, isn't it? If we had 10 minutes, I'd be kind of sort of looking down like, where's the next question? But it's great. It's good to hear you're kind of. It's funny because I had a student a while ago who I only taught him a couple of times. I don't think he was too. I try and teach it sort of teach guitar in such a way that we try and get things right from the start, so that you're not coming into these problems 6 months.
Right.
I say this, I imagine most guitar teachers try to do this in their own way, but he came along and he loved, he's a big metalhead, and he was really committed to learning. He was practicing a lot, but the songs he liked were so difficult because he had these riffs that were really simple, and then these solos, which were just these like behemoth, like huge, just like sprawling shred fests, and I was like, how do you, and it was really difficult because I could tell that was the only music he liked. He didn't really like much else. He liked a bit of like Maiden and stuff, which is cool, but it's still quite challenging when you're just getting started.
Sure.
And I don't think he really liked me saying like, these are really cool, we can look at some of the riffs, and he wanted to do the solos. I was like, we can definitely do that, but there's some stuff we got to do to get you there,
Exactly.
And it was frustrating because it's like I want to teach him the whole song, but because we were like, let's try and learn some songs, and we couldn't really get very far with them. I don't really think he liked having to kind of not do the whole song, because it would have been like, it was stuff that I mean, I'm not claiming to be some virtuoso, but I would have struggled to play it myself. It's funny that. But going on to your other, I try and sort of keep a log of all these things, and the log is backing up of the things I need to. But talking of writing, do you do the whole Logic thing or whatever, or like Cubase or Pro Tools? Do you use that, or do you a voice notes guy, or how do you go about kind of doing that?
I'm still very old school and organic. I sit down and I have to. It's got to be here first.
Yeah.
Before I start putting it down and trying to arrange it. I do use Logic, but I use Guitar Pro a lot, not to write in, but to catalog my ideas, because it's quicker for me sometimes. If I just come up with a riff on the fly, sometimes it's easier for me just to go, tap it out and hit save, and then go back to whatever I was doing if it's in the moment. Plus, when I do that, I can always go back and look at it and remember what I played. If I just record it, I might not be able to figure out what the hell I played. You know what I mean?
Did that today.
Yeah, so I try to keep that from happening. I've had that happen in the past with like guitar solos and stuff. The Outworld album and then some of the Dead Reckoning stuff. I improvised a lot of that stuff, and it seems like there's always such a big period of time that lapses between finishing the record and starting to play and rehearse the stuff again. And when I improvise the stuff 6 months later, it's like, I don't know what the hell it is. You know what I mean?
You're not exactly improvising like 3 or 4 notes there.
Right. Yeah. So exactly. I mean, there's the song Warcry off the Outworld's album. That happened in a big way, and I had to actually have the studio send me the guitar solo isolated, and then on top of that, I borrowed. And this was like a long time ago, so they didn't have some of the cool technology we have now, but I had to borrow my friend's like Tascam studio trainer thingy, and I put it in there and then slow it down. And even when I slowed it down all the way, I still couldn't figure out exactly what some of the notes were. So, I mean, I had a good idea. So after having a few of those things, it's like, okay, if I'm going to improvise these things, I need to be able to come back and take notes of it or whatever after it's done, so I remember. And I've gotten better at figuring out my own stuff. That sounds funny, probably, but
yeah, you kind of learn your own ways of. It's funny how I notice this when I'm when I sat down only today with the drummer in our band, and we were just sort of doing the moving stuff around in Logic, like, does that work there or does this work here? Yeah. And you realize how much your own brain kind of, I find that it can be difficult to keep things fresh, because you learn your habits, and obviously the more guitar you play, you kind of cement all these things, and it stacks up and up, and trying to keep it fresh is difficult. Like, how do you kind of do that?
I'm very old school with my writing in respects to some of my best stuff that I've ever written. You know, on top of, you know, when we were talking about riffs a minute ago, a lot of my stuff I write is like accidentally when I'm practicing or in lessons. But as far as like finishing songs and stuff like that, some of my best stuff has come from just being in the rehearsal room with the drummer and just starting to jam. You know, some of my best stuff's come out that way. We've finished whole songs and it's like, you know, in a very, very short period of time in one rehearsal, just because the vibe was there and you're in a state of flow. You know what I mean? That's a powerful thing. And I feel like that's missing. I haven't figured out how to get that state of flow being in my home studio, you know, because in many ways I'm restricted by my limitations of software, being able to program some drum tracks or something really quick. I feel like that, and I'm working on that, you know, I'm studying that to be better at that, because it's holding me back. And I also hate being at the mercy of other people waiting for somebody else to do the stuff, you know what I mean? Because that messes up your creative state. So yeah, at home it's hard for me to be able to have that spontaneity with Logic or you know, trying to program drums and things like that. I was a lot better at it years ago when I was doing my instrumental album, because back then I used to use this thing called a Boss DR5, and it was a little box about this big, you know, and it was a drum machine, but it also had some pads laid on it that looked like the first 6 or 7 frets of a guitar neck. So you just
cool. Okay, I've never heard of these.
Yeah, use the pads to program the drums in, but then you can also use that same neck to put in keyboards. You program keys right there on it. You program your bass on it. So I got really good at that. Most of the stuff on my instrumental album, I wrote the drums to at home, and then gave it to a drummer to actually, you know, make it a real. Because I don't profess to be a drummer. I can get you in the ballpark. You know what I mean? But as far as all the intricacies and all the fills and all that stuff, I suck at writing fills. You know, I was a lot better at that, but I've got a learning curve now. I got to a point where you know, I was always in a band with somebody that had all the gear and could do it way better than me, so I ended up selling all my stuff. And then years later, I found myself in a situation where I wasn't around anybody that had gear and could use it really well. So it's back to like going, oh crap, now it's been 10 years, 15 years now. Technology's way out front. I got to figure this shit out all over again, you know, starting from scratch. It's been a headache, and I'm pretty stubborn too. It's like, I don't want to do this, you know. I want to just play guitar. So I've really had to force myself to get in there and do it, and I'm getting a lot better at it. I was sitting with my son the other day, who's a drummer, and I had him come in. I was going to have him start trying to write some drums for a riff I came up with, and I found myself going, no, here, I got it. I'm faster than you. Just watch out, you know. So I'm progressing a little bit, you know, on those things. But you know, I know what I want up here for the most part. I just don't always know how to get it out of here when it's not the guitar, you know. I'm okay at writing bass lines, but I'm not a bass player by any means, you know. I played some bass on some of Day Reckoning's demos and stuff like that. But
I'm very much a guitar player playing the bass when I pick up the bass.
That's like, yeah, I can do that, yeah. But I can't play bass, you know.
Yeah, I can there's playing the bass and there's playing the bass. I can play the bass, you know. Like,
yeah, it's funny, you hear people talk. I've heard other guitar players talk at times about going, oh well, you know, maybe I'll just play bass, or you know, like bass is an easier instrument or something. You know what I mean? I think people have I think they have a good idea of what they think a bass player is, but when it boils down to it, I don't think bass is any easier than guitar if you play it at the same level you play guitar at.
I think it's what
it's going to be like a, you know, one, you know, do, you know, sure, but that's not. I would never strive to be that guy. You know what I mean? I would be playing like, you know, Jocko or Billy Sheehan or Jeff Berlin, or you know, I mean, you know, you're going to do it, just do it. You know.
Well, this is actually something I wrote down. I'm kind of sort of thereabouts skimming through rough ideas about what I'd written down and kind of bouncing off a few of them. But one thing I did write down is kind of what would sort of, I didn't even know how to phrase this. I just put, what would alternate reality Rusty look like if you'd picked, say, another genre or another instrument? Do you think bass would be the thing you went to, or drums, or is there I was kind of thinking, because to get so proficient at, particularly at the faster side of things, to get proficient, that takes a lot of time, and by necessity you have to not pay attention to a certain few other things. Like, I know, for example, I spend a lot of time trying to write songs, and I have friends that can shred way better than me, and vice versa. I'm sure there are other guys that spend even more time than me writing songs, but maybe their guitar playing is not quite there, you know, like, are there things that maybe you know, in another life, if you thought, okay, if someone just said to you, you're not allowed to do metal or guitar or shred, or, you know, one of these things, what do you think, maybe what avenue do you think you'd end up going down?
You know, there's a lot of things. Now, if I couldn't play guitar, right?
If there's, in some way, if you had to pick, what would be your immediate kind of, you know, let's say you're allowed to play guitar, but you're starting at day dot, so like you're picking it up like it's hurting to play kind of thing.
Sure.
So you might as well play any instrument you like kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. The first instrument that pops into my head when you mentioned that was violin. You know?
Cool.
I'm a huge violin fan, you know, the classical violin.
I noticed you had some classical kind of interest, yeah.
For sure, yeah, man. I listen to a lot of that, and I love classical piano and just piano in general, but I don't know that would be, I think, more violin for me, because when I listen to violin as a guitar player, I instantly identify with it. I remember starting to listen to Paganini when I was like 16 or 17, and I just could hear it as a guitar line. It's like, that should be on guitar. You know, I could hear it on guitar. Piano, not as much. Drums, possibly. Other genres of guitar playing, there's so many. You know, I mean, that's something that I try to branch out into enough to, like, let's say, for example, you know, I don't per se want to go be a country guitar player. I don't per se want to go be a fusion guitar player, but I love all those styles of guitar playing, and I want to know what they do so that I can use it in what I do. You know what I mean? I want to channel that in and then put it back out as whatever I'm doing. And that's you know, at the same time, that's a big thing that I tell my students. You were talking about one of your students a minute ago that wasn't really into anything but metal. It's like what I tell my students that are particularly metal driven. It's like, listen, man, if all you do is listen to metal guitar players, that's all you're going to put back out. You know, it's cool if you love metal. I love metal too, but I like all this other stuff: jazz, blues, funk, fusion, classical. You know, the kind of called Indian vocalizations and all that stuff. It's like whatever I can draw from those things and channel back into what I do is gonna make what I'm doing much more original, because I'm not just listening to one thing. If you just have one source to go to, that's going to be really limiting on what you sound like. You know, it's all those other influences, you know, that you bring in. I would like to be in a funk band and play with a horn section. You know what I mean?
That'd be amazing. Yeah.
It's just groovy, man. You know, I love that stuff. You know, I'd like to have been at Studio 54. Not sure if you know what that is or not, but
I'm going to feel like such an idiot if I should know.
No, it's old, man. It's just dating me.
Okay.
It's something I think was a big club in New York. It was just like the place to be in the 70s and whatnot. I mean, it's way before my time too, so, you know.
Yeah.
But looking back and seeing movies on it, it's like, man, that would have been pretty rad.
There's one over here called Ronnie Scott's, which is
I've heard of that.
Yeah, this is London.
Yeah.
London.
Jeff Beck, I've seen that Jeff Beck's played there.
Yeah, I know a couple of people that have played there. It's got quite a name for it. Like, it's not. I don't think it's a particularly big club, but it's like it's big in stature. It's just, you know, I think that would. But it's funny what you're saying about the horn section stuff. I think my dream. Speaking of Mark again, you know, he did the Albert Hall show with the orchestra behind. It's like that would be for me. If I could have a career that spans long enough and is successful enough that I could have an orchestra playing my songs in an event place like that. Like, to me, that would just be like, to have that kind of. There's something about any time I notice if I'm writing a song and I try and put some strings on it. If I just literally map the chords out on the strings and put it behind the chorus, it's just like instantly cooler.
Oh,
it's
that's nice. What do you use for that?
I just use the Logic MIDI. I program it on MIDI with Logic.
Okay, and that's like all built into Logic. That's like you open the piano roll and whatever.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and then I do it all.
I have not explored that yet. So
oh man, it's well worth doing.
Do that. Yeah.
Yeah, because
sure.
you can. I mean, like, so for example, I wrote a finger style part, and I was like, and we were speaking to sort of a sort of manager a while ago who said to us like, try and, because we're like a sort of a metal it's melodic sort of metal band, and he was saying like, because we have this sort of crossover, let's see if you can write something that's, you know, don't just try and write your hit, don't just try and like sell out kind of thing, but try and write something that people can really like latch onto so they go check out your other stuff, but it has to be you, you know. So I was like, I'll try and do that, and I ended up doing like a fingerstyle thing, and I thought, oh, it might sound cool on the piano, so I just put it on the piano roll as a piano and then put the strings behind it. Then I realized it just sounded like sort of Bring Me to Life, you know, Evanescence kind of, because you got the piano and the strings. It's like, and also we have a girl singing for us, so I think people would immediately go like, oh, that's just Evanescence. It's really annoying when people do that, but
it's you know, it's sometimes it's hard to be original. You know what I mean? Just like that, you weren't intending to sound like that. But
no.
When you hit the strings and whatnot, it all of a sudden kind of made you feel like, oh, now that just makes it sound like that. You know, so it's kind of tricky, isn't it?
It is. It's so difficult to. I find the biggest difficulty is the balancing. I think I have asked other people about this. I'd be interested to hear what you say, but balancing the originality with and sort of uniqueness with having that hook and having that like thing that people emotionally connect with, because as guitar players I think it's all too easy just to go off and riff shred. No, but anyone can do it, like I do it sometimes. I'm sure I know I've written riffs myself where I've been really like satisfied as a guitar player, and then I've kind of listened to it and gone like, does it do anything for me? And then I listen to someone go bam bam bam, like, oh, that's way better. Like, you know,
it's funny you mentioned that, because I discovered that sort of thing at a very early age. When I was in 10th grade, I played in this high school talent show, and I played Eruption, and played one of the guitar solos from an Ozzy tune with Randy Rhoads. Played the solo to Revelation Mother Earth, and just did some jamming and whatnot. And I noticed it really quick because, you know, as I was playing all those intricate lines from both of those solos, when I hit the whammy bar and dive bombed the low E and went, brrr, you know, everybody went fucking nuts.
Yeah.
And it was only at that one moment I thought to myself, "Oh, this is what the rest of my career is going to be like." You know, at that moment, it gave me an insight into what what the uphill battle I was facing. You know what I mean? Because it's like, you know, I could give you my guitar. Anybody off the street that doesn't play guitar, give them my guitar, and here's the pick. Hit that, and push this bar down. That's what everybody's going nuts over. No talent whatsoever to do that. You know?
Yeah, it's
interesting what amuses people. I found online a couple of weeks ago, I was trying to show somebody some Outworld stuff, and I came across, I forgot who it was, but there's this guy and this girl, Vic and Sori or something like that, and people pay them to review songs live while they sit and, you know.
Oh, like the reaction style things.
Right. So, but they never listened to the song before, and they're listening to it while you're watching them listen to it for the first time, right? And they actually did this cool. It was pretty cool. But at one moment in there, as I'm watching them listening to the song for the first time, you know, you see them going, you know, they're grooving, and all of a sudden it was the Gray Tide, and this song's long, right? And it's got like these sections in it where it just breaks down to guitar, bass, and drums and keys, and we're doing all these lines, you know what I mean? Just shredding ensemble style. And, you know, you can see, you know, where there's the head nod and rocking starts to go, oh, you know, you start to lose people, you know, and then they start to come back, and then, you know, so it's like, it was only in that perspective did I ever feel like that, because when I listen to that stuff, my own stuff, it's like, yeah, dude, that's cool shit. You know, I'm not that way at first. It takes me a long time to like my own stuff. That's another story. But when it's been many years like this, looking back, it's like, wow, that shit was actually pretty good. But just seeing other people's reactions where I'm not there with them, and they're not, you know what I mean? Just, and seeing that head bob and rocking, going to like, oh, what's going on there? And it's funny because the girl was like, yeah, there were moments in the song where I absolutely loved it, and there were moments in the song where I didn't like it at all, you know. And I know when those were, there's like in the solos, and, you know, there's a big rhythm section where it's doing some crazy stuff. And so a lot of people that they're non-musicians, they don't know about that stuff, and it's weird to them, you know. Most people are used to listening to music as background noise, filler. People don't want to have to think about music that aren't musicians. You know, when you have to start thinking about something where something's different and you can't tap your foot to it anymore, it loses them, and they lose their interest. You know, people want to get in their car in the morning and drive to work with something playing they don't have to think about. They're getting ready to go somewhere, and they got music playing, or you're hanging out with your friends, and, you know, the non-musician interest in music and the musician interest in music is completely not even anywhere close. So you're lucky if you find that way to satisfy both. I myself, as you can probably tell by the music that I've written, don't care about that too much, but maybe I would have a little bit more money if I did, but it's just what, I didn't really pick this style of music. It picked me, it's one of those things. That's just what I gravitate to intensity. I used to race motocross and drive my car fast, and it's just kind of, that's part of my DNA. I mean, it's it's not that I can't. I mean, and I have. There's plenty of documented slow solos, but nobody
leaked footage.
Remember those? Yeah. It's like you'll see people talking about stuff online, and it's like, and you can tell instantly when somebody says something about your playing that they've never really listened to you. It's like, well, that guy can't bend a note, or he can't play slow, or it's like, what, did you listen to one song? So I don't know. That's a whole other subject.
Yeah, it sounds like we both pick. You said do you still do motocross, or is that something you say?
I used to. No, I haven't raced dirt bikes in a long time. I sold my last dirt bike when I was a teenager and bought a new guitar. Long story, but
safe move.
Yeah, I came from a motocross racing family, and I got into my teens. And my two older brothers are like 10 and 12 years older than me. So by the time I was getting my teens, my dad was pretty burnt out on it. And I just got frustrated and said, fine, if we're not going to do this anymore. I'm just selling it. So I sold all my bikes and all my gear and bought a new guitar. And for years, my dad always said, I wish I would have bought you that new bike. Yeah, my dad's, that famous words that I can still hear echoing in my head, or hearing him yell down the hall at me at the house going, can't you do anything besides strangle that thing?
Yeah,
I was sorry, man. One other funny little thing. I was painting. My dad had me out in the yard painting on the garage or something one summer when I was a kid, and I had Steve Ice Flexible playing, and I think it was Call It Sleep, where he does all that weird whammy bar stuff. And my dad was like, Jesus Christ, I can play better than that. Like, whatever, So. There's
sometimes a level of complexity where you lose people so much that it's the typical one being jazz, where your average listener who's not musically inclined would listen to that. He's hitting the wrong notes. Like, it's not,
I had a student every week that would come in and go, hey, do you think that guy knows the modes? It was like, David Gilmour or, whoever. And one day I told him about Holdsworth, and the next week he came back and he goes, that guy can't play in key. It's like, no, he knows the modes. Trust me.
He's playing in keys you haven't even seen.
That's right.
Yeah.
I find that that's another example of just not knowing, but you can't blame everybody. It's just
it's
what it is.
It's difficult. Is that because I was listening to one of your podcasts, and I believe it was your co-host was saying about guitar being part of sort of your identity, and that must be quite difficult trying to, because I know I say I know how you feel. Obviously, I haven't heard your answer yet, but I can kind of guess what it'd be based on what your career is. But it's difficult having something that's part of your identity, and then, like you're saying, struggling to find balances between things, or write that riff you really want to write. Is that something that you found hard to balance? To kind of, because I find that. I think it was, I can't remember if it was you or, I'm sorry, I can't remember who it was that was on the podcast with you, and you were saying about how if you're having a bad playing day, you can be having a bad day, or vice versa, So if you're having, do you find does that ring true with you?
Yeah, I think sometimes that the type of day you're having can definitely impact your guitar playing, or it can, sometimes your guitar playing can save that day. I have found in the past that, if I'm in a bad mood or upset about something, I can go pick up my guitar, and it's like a great way to take out that frustration, and it brings me peace, and it allows me to get back to us. So I think maybe it's the guitar, maybe it's not, maybe it's just getting away from the situation, and so that you can, just relax. I have to breathe, you know what I mean? It's like something that since is going on, it's like, dude, I just stop talking. I gotta go and chill for a minute, So whether it's that or just the being able to take it out on the guitar, and take out your frustration or your anger or sadness or whatever it might be that you're experiencing, it's a good release. But sometimes when you're in that mood, picking up the guitar just makes it that much worse.
I'm one of them.
Right, because if you're having a bad day already and you pick it up and you start playing badly, it's like, well, this just great, let's get out of here, man. Forget this, that makes it really bad. But I haven't found that that's happened too many times, but it certainly has.
So it's more sort of the savior of the bad days and bad times
It
than
can
so
be.
much being, yeah.
Sure, and it's different. It's changed through the years for me personally. I've been playing a long time, man. I've been playing since '83. You know, I don't even know how many years that's been, but
I wasn't alive.
yeah, I'm sure. So it's been a long time, and as you grow and change as a person, things just change. So it's different, um, you know, I that's the best way I can probably describe it. It's just different, different times in life, and sometimes I can't find any peace in music. That's really bad. If you can't even find peace in music. So, but those are very often.
Yeah, it's
Anyway, there's something else you said. I forgot what it was I was going to address, but
I'm sure it was very important. I was going to say, we both when we were talking about the bikes, let's just say we both pick bad hobbies, because I go like bouldering, like climbing on the sort of the without the ropes, just like the short. I'm not like one of those sort of mad like Alex Honnold guys that goes up thousands of meters, but and of course that's not so great on your hands. I've got a nice
right.
flapper, as they call it, on the old first finger on the left hand, which is and of course naturally you get fatigue in your arms, like when you first pick up a guitar and you get that fatigue in your arm, like as in when you first start learning.
Sure.
It feels like that sometimes if I'm not careful. So
Sure. And I raced BMX and rode skateboards and did a lot of weight training and stuff, and so it's taken a lot of toll, on your hands and stuff like that.
that was
So
what I was going to
gotta be
ask,
careful.
actually, because I was going to say, in terms of talking about your identity and stuff, what kind of other things do you pursue beyond music?
I love being physically active. I mean, I used to work out like every day religiously, and then I hurt my shoulder and I had to stop lifting because it hurt, and I'm not just going to continue to do legs. I mean, that'd be like really weird. So of course, and when you have to stop because of an injury or whatever, then shortly after that the diet goes, and then
Mm.
But anyway, so this year in January, I went and bought a gym membership and paid for the whole year, and so I'm locked in. I'm getting back healthy. So I've always liked that. There's always been a period in my life where there's been physical activity. I like riding. I have a mountain bike. I still like riding bikes. It's a little safer. I don't go off on any crazy trail riding or mountains. Just more for the cardio, end of it. It's a little bit more fun than just being on a treadmill. But so I like to ride bikes, and I like to be being physically active. But it's been some point where I've done something. It was just like around 2010 through 2014, 15, somewhere in those years. I got to the point where I was just working out every day, 5, 6 days a week. So it was like I made a commitment to myself that I was going to continue to work out and be physically active for the rest of my life, just like I play guitar, and dedicate that to that. Because coming in and out of it doesn't really do you good in the long run. Because it's ups and downs. So I tried to commit to doing that, and so I'm trying to get back there because I'm not getting any younger. So it's good to stay
Because
healthy.
none of us are.
Yeah, right, and stay healthy. Healthy is important because being physically fit and being healthy, and it influences your mind and your thoughts, and just makes you I think more in tune and better than doing the opposite, being eating a bunch of crappy food, or drinking and all that other stuff.
I was going to say 'cause that's what I was actually going to go on to. I was going to say, do you you've sort of answered my question. I was going to say, do you feel that benefits the musical side of your life? But of course, I guess the answer is yes. But
yeah, sure, it does. I mean, it absolutely does. I look back and I think about when I look back at my career and my playing, and think about when was I the most productive, and when did I have the best, when did I have everything going on. And it was during that period when I was going to the gym, eating right, not crazy, keeping crazy sleeping hours, and things like that. So I'm trying to get all back into that gear. I've had a hand injury that's just messed me up, and so I'm trying to just do all of that stuff just to get everything right, so that I know that I'm doing everything I can possibly do. Because the hand injury that I have is not anything to do with playing guitar, but it's affected my guitar playing. Matter of fact, doctors aren't really even sure where it came from. I went to specialists, and they've x-rayed my hands, and they can't see nothing wrong with my hands. I went to acupuncture, did a chiropractor, and all this stuff, and nobody seems to be able to figure anything out. But it got to be where my ring and pinky, mainly my ring finger at first, started, like, best way I can describe is misfiring. Like, it was still moving right, but it would it would land under or over. It just wasn't landing accurately.
that's weird.
Right? And then it started to affect my pinky. So like my ring and pinky are weaker. And I know that on your hand, your hand is split down the center. This side of it's based on the ulnar nerve that goes up your arm and into your shoulder. You can have a shoulder or a neck injury, and it can mess up your guitar playing. Right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's weird to think about that stuff. You know, and I looked into seeing if it was focal dystonia or, you know, musicians. They call it musician's cramp. Have you ever heard of that?
No, but I probably should be better versed in it given the line of work.
Yeah, focal dystonia, that can end your career. I mean, and it has ended many guitar players' careers, or musicians in general. So I looked into that, and mine doesn't really seem to fit that criteria. Focal dystonia is where your fingers start to kind of lock up. Certain fingers lock up, and they curl in, you know, and you can't control it.
Actually, I have heard of that. But yeah, I have. Sorry, I have.
Yeah, I think Christian Munzer. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name right. From Obscura, and he was.
Oh no.
He was in Necrophagist, I think.
Wow. Okay.
I've
Yeah.
heard of him, but I think he
have,
had it or still has it. And I know Terry Sirik has had issues with that in the past. But if you've heard Terry's new album, you know who Terry Sirik is?
I'm not familiar. No.
Check him out. He's got a new album out called Story. It's amazing. Terry's dealt with that through his career, and seems to have overcome it. So,
I think going back to just because you brought them up, going back to Necrophagist, I've only listened to a couple of things, but every person who, like, they're not as well known as some, but every person who I know that knows them only ever says they're absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
You know, like they're one of those bands where they're not as big as some, but like,
right. And I think that's because I think the guitar player, the main guitar player, Mohammed, I think he's gone on to another career and doing some like high end gig at doing some electronics thing or something.
Wow.
Maybe with a car company or something. I'm not really sure. But, you know.
Oh, I thought you meant like electronics, like synths, as in like he was.
No,
like
it's not music related at all.
Okay, got it.
Technology and like a cars or something. I'm not really sure. But that band, when they came out, I think there's only have 2 albums. But those 2 albums have influenced so many bands. It's not even funny. So they certainly have, you know, when you stop putting out music, it starts to fade. But, you know, so there's bands out there that are influenced by them indirectly because their influences were influenced by them, you know. It's funny, my singer was, somebody asked my singer a question in an interview, and he was talking about me, and he goes, most guitar players out there today, you know, because I was one of the first YouTube guys, right? And he said, most guitar players out there today, whether they know it or not, are influenced by Rusty indirectly, one way or another, because just about everybody out there's watched that stuff, and whether they like Rusty or not, the guitar player they probably learned from does, or something like that. It's kind of a trickle down thing, you know. It's interesting to see that. So I think the same thing's kind of like with Necrophagist. You know, there's many bands I can go, oh yeah, those dudes totally listen to Necrophagist. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's very obvious when you know their music, you can hear it. And most of those guys, they'll tell you. A lot of musicians out there, in my experience, don't like to tell you who their influences are, in some respects.
I always think it's a bit sad, really. I think you need to.
They want you to think it's like they're all divine and magical, and it comes from some other source. But it's like, you know, we all listen to each other. You know,
I had a phase that I don't so much regret, but like it was a bit silly, really. Where in terms of songwriting, where I thought I don't want to sound like anyone else, so I'm going to actively avoid like trying to learn these things. It didn't mean I wasn't playing the guitar. I was just I was like, I don't want to learn, you know, all these Alter Bridge songs, or these Slipknot is another one I really like. Or I'm not so big. I still like them now, but not so much an influence anymore. But I was like, no, I'm not going to learn them. And then I found I was still writing stuff because I still listened to the music. I was still writing stuff that sounded kind of like them. It just wasn't. It was, you know, it was just not quite as directly similar. So I realized this is silly, and then I realized all the best stuff I was writing, especially when we then went to the studio, and Tom, the producer, was like, oh, do something a bit like, and then he'd Google a song and play it to us, and we'd all go, oh yeah, let's put that in. And then suddenly you realize, like, all the best things happen when you just can appreciate what someone else has done and do it in your own way, or like, it might inspire you to do something that no one's done yet, you know, because your little way of doing it might be totally new.
Absolutely, and that's something that I've discovered at an early age, you know, because I've always wanted to write my own music and play in a band from the beginning. It was never, I just want to try guitar. It was just, I'm going to do this, you know what I mean? That's kind of the way I'm wired. I've always just been, you know, it's all or nothing. Let's do this. You know, Nike's slogan isn't just try it. You know, let's just do it. You know, let's do this thing. So when I first started playing guitar, I you know, I was like every other guitar player. I tried to learn stuff. You know, I was wanting to learn that song and want to learn this song, And I found very quickly that, you know, when I got good enough, that when I was trying to learn something by another guitar player, that 5 or 10 minutes into it, I would have written, you know, 3 or 4 of my own riffs, you know. So that's when I discovered, well, I'm already pretty good at this writing thing, or whatever, you know what I call it. But I'm sure my writing wasn't that good then. But, you know, I felt like I could do this, you know, on my own. So from that point on, I quit learning songs by other people, because I would listen to them and try to do my own thing based on what I was hearing and create that vibe, you know. For example, like when I was in high school, I would improvise along with Racer X records. So I never tried to play what Paul was playing, but I would try to mimic it. So when I was first learning how to improvise, and I got enough technique that I could play like that, you know. So I would listen to whatever he was doing in the solo, and I would try to, if it was an ascending run, I would try to do my own ascending run or descending or tap or whatever, just kind of create my own thing, but trying to mimic in a way, but without learning it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
So I'm never copying. So if I happen to come up with a cool lick, even though it might be heavily inspired by Paul, it's not a Paul Gilbert lick. You know,
that's really interesting.
Yeah. So I would try to mimic it, or if it's like I got a new CD or album by a band, and I really like this riff in the song. Instead of trying to learn that riff, I would try to kind of figure out what was going on to create my own version of that. So, and many times, which is to my surprise, when I would go, oh yeah, that's my Yngwie riff right there, you know, people would go, wow, that doesn't sound like Yngwie at all, you know, and so that means my interpretation, while it might have been Yngwie, it didn't come out just sounding like Yngwie or whoever, you know what I mean? So it always surprised me when I would think that, oh, this is this lick or by this guy or whatever, and then people go, that doesn't sound like that at all. So it's like, I don't know if that's good or bad. I mean, it's good that it doesn't sound verbatim like somebody else, but maybe my interpretation is so far off, you know, well, it's right ballpark, you know.
You can do a sort of Picasso style thing where it's like, no, it is a face.
Yeah. If you get close enough, you know, or stand far enough back.
Or just the right angle, you know. Yeah. No, it's funny actually, because I'm interested to hear what you think of this, because when I teach and when I learn stuff myself, I always try and say, like, let's try and, when we're learning the piece, let's go into all these little intricacies that we're learning Hendrix, right? Like, I have plenty of students who want to learn Hendrix, and it's like, okay, we can sound sort of like Hendrix, or we can sound exactly like him. And obviously, a lot of the people I teach, they want to sound exactly, they just want to sound like what's on the thing. But also, I think there's a benefit in that if you can learn the tiny little intricacies, if you can learn like how Gary Moore adds the vibrato and how's he doing that, you can then start to be more active in how you implement it in your own playing. Because that's my interpretation. I'm not one personally for sort of kind of putting my own spin on those things. I like to learn them almost quite rigidly, so that I can then almost forget that I did that. It sounds silly, but
no, I totally get it. You know, it's like when I'm teaching and it comes to somebody learning other songs, I generally don't teach the whole song. I just don't. It's like, if you want to learn the whole song, realistically, you can save yourself some money and go download a tab from the internet.
I do say that as well, for the record.
You know what I mean? But so what I do is a lot of times I'll teach a snippet, you know, a little section, and it's always for what are we learning from this? You know, beginner, here's the Iron Man riff. What are we doing? We're working on power chords, working on slides. You know, sure, it's a cool riff. It's something you can identify with, which is important for beginning-oriented students, because they want to play songs, you know what I mean? Which is nothing wrong with that. That's why, you know, you pick up the guitar, you want to do something with it, right? So you can instant gratification, you know?
Yeah.
But it's for me, it's always, what are we learning from this? You know, and yes, let's learn it right. And I'll sit there and with students, like if they come in and they say, hey, can we learn this song or this riff or whatever? And I'll say, sure, man. And if I have a tab for it, cool. If not, they might have a tab for it. And I'll say, okay, but before we start this, let's go to YouTube. Let's see if we can find a video of this guy teaching the part. Because a lot of times you can find, you know, a lesson with the actual artist teaching it.
Or Mr. Tabs is brilliant.
Let's go watch a live video of this guy playing it. Let's see if the tab is even in the right ballpark. Because we don't want to spend time looking at this tab if it's, you know, the fingering's not even close. Because if you're going to learn something, I want to try to learn it the way that guitar player played it. Not you know, little Timmy next door's transcription to Smoke on the Water, you know, right? So, you know, I want it to be as authentic as possible so that you can then build off that. Because, I mean, you know, there was times, you know, where I was trying to learn something by another guitar player, and I learned what he was doing, but it just didn't work out for me. The fingering was like, just didn't make sense to my particular style of playing. So I just rearranged the whole section. You know, it's kind of like when I'm sitting down, because I do a lot of, you know, not a lot. It's not as much as I should. But I listen to a lot of Paganini stuff, and I have the 24 Caprice book, and I go through and I'll find sections of caprices that I like or whatever. And I'll, you know, of course there's no tab for it. And if there is a guitar tab for it, I probably really don't want to watch it, or because when it's violin, you know, I'm going to just start with the notation, that's the violin literature, and I'm going to figure it out myself. So, you know, in those moments, you know, there's so many ways you can do it, you know, because it's like, you know, the fingering, you know, there's so many ways to do it. The same thing on guitar. You know, there's 6 of these same E's, unison E's, you know what I mean? How do you know which one it is when you're reading music notation? You know, you got to kind of look at the whole score and go, okay, well, if I play this E, I'm not going to be able to play the rest of the song, you know, so you got to arrange it properly. I've got so many different, you know, I've got about 3 or 4, maybe even 5 variations of the 5th Caprice, and I'll start tapping out another one, and then like little ways into it, it'll be like, oh, this is really awkward, and I change the fingering to this, and so it's being able to arrange it, and that kind of goes back to being well versed in techniques, not just being good at alternate picking or sweep picking or whatever, because then I can rearrange that one idea maybe 4 or 5 different ways, and maybe the string skipping legato version works better than an alternate picked you know, version, or a sweep pick version or something like that. Just having that ability to listen and change the fingering into something that works for you. You know, because when it comes from another instrument, it's all fair game. You know, it's not like, you know, well, Yngwie played it here, so that's probably the best place to play it. You know, so
is with the because it sounds like you've got a really great sort of level of focus and a sort of attention to detail in what you're doing. Is that something? Because and again, this kind of ties into forgetting all the sort of musicality, any writing, anything, purely just on pure ability. You got to put the hours in to kind of play at the sort of speed that you're playing at. If you when we're talking about the really fast stuff, you know, forgetting all the songwriting and that. Sure. Do you think nowadays, with the way the world is, we're going to see perhaps less people who can actually reach these sort of speeds? And the reason I ask that is, and not just speed, I mean sort of technical proficiency as a whole, because it's so easy to have your attention stolen from you by your phone or something, or someone talking on a podcast, God knows. But, you know, this is so easy to have your attention taken away. And I sort of have not a theory, it's a bit of a sort of doom and gloom sort of theory, I guess, but that actually, worryingly, we might start to see less good music or proportionately less good music in the next 20, 30 years, because people in my generation are growing up with a huge amount less attention. Like, you know, don't sleep as much as like the generation before, and spend way more time looking down at the phones. Sure. Do you think perhaps we're going to actually suffer from, you know, the music industry is going to suffer from that? And do you think we'll maybe see less of these virtuoso kind of players as well?
I think what we're going to see is a lot more, maybe not a lot more, but we're going to see a lot of guys that are perceived as a guitar virtuoso because we're only seeing them online. And most of these guitars players that are playing online today, they're making these videos, you're not really hearing what they're playing. Even if you're watching them play it, it might have been recorded at half speed, sped back up, and they're just like going along with it on their video. Because you don't ever really hear, even nowadays when people are shooting videos at home, they're like pre-recorded. And well, I mean, obviously they're pre-recorded, but what I mean is they're not live in the moment. So if I post a video, it's gonna be me playing it. You know, maybe I'll put the cell phone up or whatever and record it. It's not gonna be me with my backing track in a DAW and then plugging my guitar into that and recording it and then syncing it up with the video. If you see a video of me, it's unless it's an exclusive music video from one of my bands or something like that. If you see just a video of me playing at home, it's me playing it in that moment, not with any trickery or nothing like that. I'm really playing it, you know what I mean? Nowadays, these guys, I mean, guitar players out there now are taking and programming their stuff in Guitar Pro, sending the clean signal to their DAW and putting a plug-in on it. And then you think what you're hearing is them playing it. You know, if it sounds too perfect, most likely it's not real, you know? So there's a lot of fake guitar players out there now. And that's why I gave Terry Siric a quote for his new album, because I know Terry, and what you're hearing is Terry playing. You know, a lot of these guys aren't really playing. So it's a lot of fake stuff out there. And you can't believe what you're seeing with your eyes, because you can watch somebody play and it looks like they're playing it, but what you're hearing and seeing are not the same.
The thing is, even if they are playing it, it might be take number 89, you know, in which case it's like, well, still great that you play it, but like, you know that they might have played that wrong a load of times. Like,
sure. Yeah, can you play it live? And some of these guys that are out there that are doing this, I know them and they can play it live because I've seen them. But it's like, for me, it's like, I can't do that. I mean, if it's a music video, it's just the way you do it. You go in, you do 50 million takes. You're just playing along with the record because it's a music video. It's production. Yeah. It's not like, here, look, watch me play this song for my record. It's not like one of those things. I could never just fake it. I mean, I've heard stories about people going to see bands. I had a friend that was on tour, and they were on his festival tour, where he was watching this band play, and neither one of the guitar players had their guitars plugged in.
Ooh.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, no, they just play with the backing tracks. It's like, well, and the fans, and here's the weird thing, like, some of these fans out there, they don't even care that they're not really playing it. There's Zach, my co-host, was telling me there's some guy on TikTok, and a conversation came up about guitar players faking it, because there was a video of somebody on TikTok telling people how to do this. Yeah, you go in, you play it at half speed, and people are like all encouraging this, right? And it's so frustrating. In other words,
I can tell it struck a chord. Yeah,
a lot of these guitar players are like, an up and coming guitar player will be inspired by one of these guitar players. Go, oh man, how did you do that? And they'll be like, oh man, you just got to practice. And they're not even really doing it. And then you're telling somebody, imagine how discouraging that could be, to think that, oh yeah, just practice, when that person themselves is not even really doing it,
Well, it's kind of the equivalent of the sort of the filters on Instagram, isn't it? It's the guitar equivalent of that. It's the kind of instant, it kind of instantly changes how we see things, and it is. It's
like going out on a date with a girl who's got a push-up bra and hair extensions and fake nails and implants and all this stuff. And you wake up the next morning, it's like, what? Who's that? Right? It's the same thing. It's fake. You're going to be exposed at some time. The light is going to shine on you and expose all of your flaws. Yeah. Or whatever. So just be real, because it's going to come to the surface eventually.
Yeah, and I think all the best players, you can tell, you can kind of tell, and you can get a feel for it. And I go to a lot of gigs, and there've been so many times now where there are these great artists, and hear it live, and that the reason, a big part of why they've got there is they're the real deal. Like they can right. do that, and unfortunately, obviously not seen so many bands in the last few years, but one band I saw recently, if you've listened to much of Lorna Shore.
I've heard of them, yeah. Recently, they came on my radar from a few of my students.
Yeah, they blew up I say blew up, I think they've been fairly big for a while, but it's not quite my genre. It's really on the real heavy. Yeah, it's heavy. Like, normally I'm more into something with a melody in the vocals, whereas it's pure harsh vocals, which I get, but but the guitar player, I want to try and get him on here. I was absolutely blown away watching him live. I mean, don't get me wrong, he was in the zone. Like, he was on it. Like, there was no room for error. But you can just watch it, like, because the way live music is, especially like it's sort of deathcore band, you don't hear all the detail, especially in a fast solo. But I could tell just by watching. Even if you missed half the notes, I still know he's a phenomenal player just by watching him. Quite often you can just see. Just see the way he moves and the way.
And there's always the human factor, man. We are human beings. We're not going to be perfect ever.
Yeah.
There's no such thing. Every night there's going to be something. If you walk out of every gig thinking how great you are, you have nothing left to strive for if you're anything.
Never going to get any better.
You know what I mean? It's like I always try to learn something from each show. It's like, what should I not do again? You know what I mean? Or how can I be more prepared? Whether it's down to having a couple of hand towels because the club you might be in or whatever is so hot, you start sweating and you can't, your shirt's soaked, and then you have nothing to dry your hands on. Mm-hmm. Something as simple as that. Those little details make all the difference in the world and gig experience and how your experience is in that night. I'm going to start trying to use in-ears if I can, because I can only imagine if I could hear on stage everybody in my band and myself perfectly, how much better and tighter the band would be.
Yeah, we'd love to get some of them. They're so expensive. I think you're looking at I guess translating to dollars, it would probably be about $500 per person, something like minimum, really. It's a lot of money, especially for small bands, to sound good. Obviously you can sound good without them, but
for sure, man. I mean, I've done it for years, but there's times where it's just like, some of the bands, Outworld was a incredibly technical band, um, and if and we didn't have our own sound man, so we were at the mercy of whoever was at the venue that night or whatever. And with that band, I have to hear certain parts from everybody in the band. And that's going to make the difference of whether I'm locked in or not. So there's been times, even in Day of Reckoning, which is not as technical as Outworld. There are times when if the sound's not right, I got to go stand by the drummer, and that's going to make my performance suck that night. But if I don't stand by the drummer, what you're going to hear me play is going to be crap. It's going to be off time, or like where am I at? What can't lock in? So it's very critical to being able to hear. That's so important. And people in the audience, they don't know if they're not a musician. A great band can sound awful too because of a bad sound man. The band might play perfect, but if you're in the audience and the sound guy sucks, you just think, wow, this band sounds awful.
I'm pretty sure we sound different every time we play, just because of whoever.
Right.
Not always bad, but like as in.
Right.
Like, I heard a lot of the backing track today.
It's always also interesting to hear the people from the audience's reaction after the show. Usually when I think I've had a great gig, it doesn't sound as good to them. Or vice versa. If I think I've had an awful gig, they're like, "Man, you guys sound awesome tonight." It's like, "Oh God, thank you." I mean, I'll try not to go into why I think we sucked because that's a whole other thing. But
I'm weirdly I'm the typical obnoxious guitarist where when they say, "What do you like in your monitor?" I'm just like, me. I just want to please, can I just hear me? Like I need the drums. I just need drums and me, and as long as I can hear the vocal and I know where I'm at in the song. Like I don't know if you ever had that where you finish like a chorus and you're suddenly like, how many choruses? Wait, have we done one chorus or two? Whereas if I can just hear myself really well, I know. Like we sometimes just for fun because it's a good song, we cover "Toxicity" by System of a Down, and there's so many. I can't count how many times I've come to the end of a chorus and been thinking, shit, riff or because I can't start going into a riff and the drummer's just like calmly playing the verse part. What I was going to ask was, you were talking about always learning and stuff from your sort of experiences. This might be a difficult question, but what do you think is maybe the last thing that you kind of learn, the last sort of important lesson you learn? And I don't just mean like sort of, how to play something. I mean like important lesson. It could be a life lesson, a music lesson, whatever. Sure. If you could pick anything out. That might be putting you on the spot a little.
Well, no, I'm trying to think, just the most important lesson. That could be many things. I think one of the most important things, I think just as with the years of experience that I have, is just try to be as self-sufficient as you can. You know what I mean? Try to be able to, be versatile, be diverse, be flexible, and, know as much about everything as you can. You know what I mean? Just, in this day and age, you can't just be a good guitar player. You have to be, really to be successful, you have to be on it 365 days a year, 24/7. You know what I mean? Because there's always something that can be done. And it means, being proficient at playing guitar, working on your songwriting, being able to record yourself proficiently, being able to do video editing, being able to do social media. There's so much that musicians have to take on themselves nowadays and be proficient at. There's not enough time in the day, to do all of that, And if you're going to focus on being that level of a guitar player, you don't really have time to do all that other stuff, because that takes up all your time for many years until you get to that level. And then you still got to maintain it and still continue to grow, because you don't just stop when you get there. It's not like, okay, now I can play fast, I'm done. It's like, well, now what? What are you gonna do with those chops? You got
to do something with it.
So I think that's the most important thing: be versatile and continue to grow and learn as much about the music industry and music business as possible. Try to be in charge of your finances and know about business and be smart about it. Because if you're not, people will take advantage of you easy. And just know as much as you can. If you can design your own website, great. And just, keep it up and running, and you're good at social media and blasting out your videos and staying on top of what's current. If you want to build a following and you're getting started, those things are super important, because you can't do it any other way. Because it's you can't get there just being a good guitar player anymore. And not that you could then, but it's different. It's different. When I was growing up and learning how to play guitar, all I had to do was be a good guitar player. If I needed to record, we went into a studio. I didn't have to know how to run a studio. Nowadays you do, because the technology's there. It's great that we have that technology. You can set up a good home studio for as much as it cost to buy a 4-track years ago. A good 4-track was $600-700 or something. But anyway, I think that's kind of a hodgepodge of stuff. But
it's always best when you can. I like when you or anyone gives answers that you can kind of unpack in your own way. You can take away what you find to be important and profound about that, and like good music, really. It's weirdly sort of weird trying to. I was really trying to stretch that metaphor there, but it's been like music, but it is.
Man, I wanted to ask you something.
Go on then.
I know you're a big Alter Bridge fan, right?
Yeah.
So, being an Alter Bridge fan, what other bands do you like that would fall into that particular genre or type of songwriting? And because you like melodic and good vocals, and you know what I mean. You don't want to hear guttural death metal vocals on every song and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Alter Bridge fan too. I just like Mark Tremonti in general. I mean, I love all his
He's
stuff.
fantastic. Yeah.
I find there's a lot of bands that sound like that. So if you're trying to find other sources of inspiration similar, who do you look to?
That is a very good question, and I'm going to really rudely just have a quick, because it's a bit like Guitar Shop syndrome when someone says, "Go and play us a song," you go, it's a bit like you're now asking me,
right.
Can you name some bands? One that weirdly first came to mind, and they're not actually that, they've blown up this last year or two, that really, really good, called Sleep Token. I don't know if you've heard of them.
No, I haven't heard of them.
The vocalist, he's got a very, it sounds like a weird way to describe it, but a very British accent. He's clearly, they're all anonymous, but he's very clearly British. That's all we know.
Sure, and you usually don't hear a British accent.
No, you don't often.
Singing, it goes away.
It's so cleverly, they're so catchy. I'm not so interested. It's quite riffy in places, but like sort of djenty kind of riffs, and I'm not so interested in that. I'm more interested. I've broken these songs down with students, and it's like little vocal harmonies that are so simple, or vocal lines that pair up with guitar parts so brilliantly. Sleep Token's one. I'm just having a very brief look. I've been big on Bleed From Within lately. I'm actually wearing their shirt.
I haven't heard them either.
These are UK bands, to be fair. I'm really getting into. There's some real cool stuff. And tell you what, just before you go, I'll once we're done with this, I'll point you the way if I want to hear what you think of a riff or two before we. That's what comes to mind. Sleep Token is the first one. I'm having a very, very brief shuffle through.
No worries, man. That's pretty on the spot, but I was just curious because it's like I like them, and it's hard to find other bands that fit in that niche. I mean, I like some other bands. Like I like Seven Dust. I like them.
Yeah, they're cool.
I find that some of the newer Seven Dust kind of sounds kind of a little Tremonti, Alter Bridge-ish at times. Similar with tones and songwriting things.
I've got one actually.
Yeah.
You know what? Weirdly, as much as so when you look at new metal, a lot of it's known for kind of being quite simple, catchy, hooky, like big riffs. Think of like Limp Bizkit, that kind of thing.
Sure.
But like. I think as songwriters, Korn are horrendously underrated. As in terms of how they put songs together, how they throw tricks into their songs, the textures they use. Like, I think when you look at new metal, you think like big drop B, Mesa Boogie riffs, but you don't maybe think much beyond that. And I actually, my sort of hot take is that Korn, in terms of songwriting, are actually way beyond possibly what new metal is defined as a genre. I think.
And that's maybe why they're still around.
Maybe, yeah. I Slipknot do this. They kind of have that, System, all of the System of a Down, all those. But I think in particular something about Korn.
Yeah.
I think Slipknot are just so horrendously good at what they do.
I think they're even though they come from the same kind of genre, I think they're incredibly different.
Yes. Yeah.
Korn's, and they're both unique and individual. I don't think either of them sound the same, but they're Slipknot's a lot heavier. If that makes sense. I mean, because Korn's heavy, it's not that technically intricate, heavy riffing stuff. You know what I mean? So they're different. But I liked it when they started doing solos.
We'll tell you what I'll do is I'll see if I can think of some more. Definitely check out Sleep Token. They're awesome. Okay. We'll leave it at that, and I will. Sure. I want to quickly show you a riff or two, seeing as you say you like Alter Bridge, because as you can probably guess, I'm a little inspired by. So if there's anything you want to quickly plug or promote, go ahead.
Sure, man. I give guitar lessons. Anybody out there wants some guitar lessons, man, hit me up. Rusty Cooley social at gmail.com. You can also find me at rustycooley.com, and then check out the podcast. It's right now. It's actually not a podcast yet. It's just all episodes on my YouTube channel. So youtube.com/Mr. Rusty Cooley, and I think through those mediums, you can find just about everything and everything else you need to find for me. So hit me up. Let's rock.
Amazing. Let's rock. That's a good way to end this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You bet, man. Thank you.